The desperate call. The morning sky above New Zalara burned crimson as another orbital defense platform exploded in brilliant orange flames. Ambassador Lyra Zelani pressed her six-fingered hand against the reinforced transparasteel window of the emergency council chamber, watching debris rain down like deadly meteors onto her homeworld's capital city. 3 weeks ago, this same sky had been the soft lavender color that made Zelani Prime famous throughout the peaceful sectors of the galaxy. Now, everything was different. The Krex Empire had come without warning, without negotiation, without even the courtesy of a declaration of war. Their massive obsidian warships had simply materialized at the edge of Zelani space, like harbingers of doom, and begun systematically destroying everything in their path. Colonies that had taken generations to build were reduced to glowing craters in a matter of hours. "Ambassador, we need you in the communications center immediately," said Captain Jake Morrison, the only human currently stationed on Zelani Prime as part of an interspecies military advisory program. His weathered face showed the strain of 3 sleepless days coordinating evacuations and trying to organize what remained of the Zelani defense fleet. Jake had been scheduled to return to Earth next month after completing his 2-year assignment. Now none of them knew if there would be anything left to return to. Lyra followed Jake through the marble corridors of the government complex, her elegant silver robes billowing behind her. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the distant rumble of explosions seemed to grow closer with each passing hour. The Krex ground forces had established beachheads on the northern continent yesterday, and reports from the front lines painted a grim picture of systematic destruction. The communication center buzzed with desperate activity. Dozens of Zelani technicians worked frantically at holographic displays, sending distress signals across the galaxy and coordinating the evacuation of outer colonies. Director Tam Viridian stood at the center of it all, his usually pristine appearance now disheveled, after days without proper rest. The elderly Zelani's crest feathers, normally a proud display of royal blue, had faded to a dull gray with stress. "How bad is it?" Lyra asked, though she dreaded the answer. Director Viridian turned to her with exhausted violet eyes. "We've lost contact with 12 outer colonies in the past 6 hours. The defense fleet at Kepler Station was completely obliterated this morning. Our remaining ships are falling back to form a last defensive line around the core worlds, but our tactical computers give us less than 48 hours before they're overwhelmed." Lyra felt her dual heart sink in her chest. The Zelani Republic had enjoyed 3 centuries of peace, focusing their efforts on art, science, and diplomacy rather than warfare. Their small defensive fleet was designed for patrol duties and disaster relief, not facing the full military might of a conquering empire. They had always believed that their neutral stance and reputation for wisdom would protect them from conflicts like this. "What about the other species? Have any of them responded to our requests for assistance?" she asked. Viridian gestured toward a bank of communication terminals where responses continued to trickle in. "The Altarian Federation has promised to send medical supplies and refugee transport ships. The Centauri Union is preparing humanitarian aid packages. The Crystalline Hegemony has offered to provide quantum-encrypted communications to help coordinate civilian evacuations. And military assistance." Viridian's crest feathers drooped further. "The Galactic Council has condemned the Krex attack and imposed economic sanctions. Several major powers have suspended trade relations with the Empire. The Andromedans have pledged to send a squadron of cruisers, but they won't arrive for at least 2 weeks." Lyra almost laughed, but there was no humor in their desperate situation. Economic sanctions and a handful of ships arriving after the war was over would not save her people. The Krex Empire could finish conquering the entire Zelani Republic in a matter of days at their current pace. A tremendous explosion shook the building, causing dust to cascade from the ornate ceiling. The lights flickered momentarily before emergency power systems stabilized the grid. Through the tall windows, Lyra could see smoke rising from the spaceport district where Krex fighters were strafing civilian evacuation centers. "We need to send another transmission," she decided, "a stronger message. Make it clear to the galaxy exactly what's at stake here." Within minutes, they had prepared a new broadcast that would reach every inhabited system within 100 light-years. Lyra stood before the recording array, trying to compose herself. She knew that billions of beings across the galaxy would see this message. She had to make them understand what the loss of Zilani civilization would truly mean. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "I am Ambassador Lyra Zilani of the Zilani Republic. As I speak, to you now our worlds are under attack by the Krex Empire. They have destroyed our outer colonies and are advancing toward our core systems. Our people are dying." She paused as another explosion echoed in the distance, closer this time. "We have always been a peaceful civilization. For 3 centuries, we have contributed to galactic culture, science, and diplomacy. We have mediated disputes between warring factions, shared our knowledge freely, and opened our worlds to refugees from dozens of conflicts. We have helped others in times of need. Now we are the ones who desperately need help." The words came from her heart now, not from any prepared diplomatic script. "We are not asking others to fight our battles for us. We are asking for whatever assistance you can provide. Ships, weapons, supplies, anything that might help us survive long enough to find a peaceful solution. The Krex Empire seeks to erase everything we have built, everything we are, everything we might yet become. Please, if you have ever believed in protecting the innocent and standing against tyranny, help us now." The transmission ended and Lyra felt emotionally drained. She had put everything into those words, all her people's hope and desperation. Now they could only wait and see if anyone would answer their call. Over the next several hours, responses began arriving from across the galaxy. Most followed the same pattern they had seen before. The Aquatic Collective would accept Zilani refugees on their ocean worlds. The silicon-based HiveMind offered to preserve Zilani cultural databases in their vast digital archives. The trading consortium promised to boycott Krex goods. Then a message arrived that caught everyone's attention. It came from human space, from a planet called Earth. The transmission was unusually brief, lacking the flowery diplomatic language that typically filled such communications. Message received and understood. Fleet en route. Estimated arrival in 72 hours. Terra Command out. Captain Morrison, who had been helping coordinate the incoming messages, looked puzzled as he studied the transmission data. "That doesn't sound like our diplomatic corps," he said. "Human government messages are usually much longer and filled with political language. This came directly from Terra Command through military channels." Director Viridian examined the routing information. "Terra Command is your primary military coordination center, correct? Perhaps they are sending a patrol squadron to assist with evacuations." Lyra felt a small spark of hope ignite in her chest. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as capable fighters, though their military was considered relatively small compared to the major galactic powers. Even a modest human fleet might be able to buy them some precious time, or at least help evacuate civilians from the most threatened worlds. "How many ships do you think they might send?" she asked Morrison. The human captain considered the question carefully. "Earth maintains maybe 60 major warships spread across all our territories for patrol and defense duties. If they can spare some from their other obligations, perhaps 10 or 12 ships. It would be a significant commitment for us, given our limited resources. 10 or 12 ships would not be enough to stop the Krex assault, but it was more military assistance than any other species had offered." For the first time in days, Lyra allowed herself to feel cautiously optimistic. Outside the window, the sky continued to burn as enemy ships pressed their relentless attack. But somewhere in the darkness of space, help was finally coming. The humans were coming. Meanwhile, in the command center of the Krex flagship Annihilator, General Voss Krex studied the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. The conquest was proceeding exactly according to his carefully crafted plan. Red icons representing his invasion fleet surrounded the blue dots marking Zilani worlds like predators circling wounded prey. "Status report," he commanded, his gravelly voice carrying the authority of someone who had crushed dozens of civilizations beneath his iron heel. "The 7th Outer Colony has surrendered, General," reported his tactical officer, a scarred veteran named Commander Thex. "Minimal resistance encountered. Their orbital defenses were eliminated within 4 hours of engagement." Voss nodded approvingly. The Zilani fought with admirable courage, but they were simply outmatched by superior Krex technology and military doctrine. Their small patrol vessels and outdated weapon systems were no match for the Empire's overwhelming firepower. It was almost disappointingly easy. What news from the core worlds? Long-range sensors indicate they are consolidating their remaining fleet around Zilani Prime and the industrial centers. Approximately 300 ships, mostly light cruisers and frigates. They appear to be preparing for a final defensive stand. 300 ships. Voss commanded over 2,000 vessels in this campaign alone, with additional reinforcements available if needed. The Zilani fleet would last perhaps 6 hours against his full assault force. Any response from the Galactic community? Commander Thex consulted his data tablet. The usual protests and economic sanctions. Several species have offered humanitarian aid, but no military assistance of note. Our intelligence network indicates that most major powers are too concerned with their own territorial disputes to intervene in what they consider a regional conflict. This was always how it went. The galaxy was full of civilizations that spoke eloquently about justice and protecting the innocent, but when the time came for action, they inevitably found excuses. They were too far away, too busy with their own problems, too afraid of Krex retaliation. There is one item of interest, General, Thex continued. Our intelligence operatives intercepted a transmission from human space. They appear to have responded to the Zilani request for assistance. Voss turned from his tactical display with mild curiosity. Humans? The species from those primitive worlds near the galactic rim? Yes, General. They sent a message indicating they were dispatching a fleet to provide assistance. For a moment, Voss felt a flicker of concern. Then he remembered what his intelligence files said about humans. They were a young species, barely 4 centuries into space travel. Their territory consisted of perhaps 40 systems, mostly small colonies and research outposts. Their military was considered modest by galactic standards. How many ships are they sending? Unknown, General. The message was extremely brief. Our analysts estimate they could spare perhaps 15 vessels at most without leaving their own territory completely defenseless. Voss relaxed, his momentary concern evaporating. 15 human ships would make no meaningful difference to his campaign. If anything, it might provide his crews with some additional target practice before the real battle began. Continue with the assault plan. We will reach the core worlds within 36 hours. When the human ships arrive, we will deal with them, quickly and efficiently, before returning to the business of conquest. The Krex fleet pressed forward through space toward their final objective, unaware that humanity was about to demonstrate a fundamental truth that no alien species had yet discovered. When humans said they were sending a fleet, they meant every single ship they could possibly muster. The Armada arrives across the galaxy, in the Sol system that humanity called home. Something unprecedented was taking place. The orbital shipyards around Earth buzzed with activity as massive cargo vessels launched carrying supplies and personnel to staging areas throughout human space. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching dozens of holographic displays showing fleet movements from every corner of human territory. Ships were converging from systems that most galactic citizens had never heard of, leaving only skeleton crews to maintain basic security at their home bases. What had started as a standard military response was rapidly becoming the largest coordinated effort in human history. Report from the Mars Colonial Defense Force, announced Commander Rodriguez, her aide-de-camp. They've committed 87 vessels, including their entire heavy cruiser squadron and both carrier battle groups. They're pulling ships from asteroid mining protection details and deep space patrol routes. Admiral Chen nodded, making notes on her electronic tablet. The response had been immediate and overwhelming once word of the Zilani situation spread through human space. Every government, from the largest Earth nations to the smallest independent colonies, had agreed to contribute whatever they could spare. What about the outer territories? Even the frontier settlements are sending whatever they have available. Captain Williams is bringing 14 patrol boats from the Kepler system. The research station at Barnard Star is converting their survey vessel into a combat support ship with volunteer crew. The agricultural colonies in the Tau Ceti system have organized 3 cargo ships loaded with medical supplies and spare parts. The scale of mobilization amazed even Chen, who had spent 30 years in human military service. Throughout their history, humans had fought countless wars among themselves, but when faced with an external threat to innocent people, old rivalries and political differences disappeared overnight. Current total count? Commander Rodriguez checked her master display. 4,236 vessels confirmed and en route. We're still receiving final numbers from several remote systems. Chen felt a mixture of pride and grim determination. The Krex Empire was about to discover something that no other galactic civilization had yet learned. Humanity's true military strength had never been tested because they had never needed to deploy everything at once. Any word from the supply? Convoys? Marine transport ships are loading at 23 different staging areas across human space. Ammunition ships and mobile repair facilities are converging on the assembly point near Jupiter. The logistics coordinators estimate we'll have enough supplies to maintain combat operations for 6 months if necessary. Chen turned to examine the main tactical display, which showed the growing human armada near Jupiter's largest moon. Ships of every conceivable class and configuration filled the space around the massive gas giant. Ancient destroyers that had seen action in humanity's early colony wars floated alongside cutting-edge battleships fresh from the orbital shipyards. Converted civilian cargo haulers flew in formation with sleek military cruisers. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Parker from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Zilani ambassador. She's requesting additional details about our fleet composition and estimated time of arrival." Chen considered this carefully. The humans had deliberately kept their response vague, not wanting to raise expectations too high in case the situation deteriorated before they could arrive. No species in the galaxy knew the true extent of human military capability, because they had never been forced to reveal it. Send a general reply. Tell them we will provide whatever assistance is necessary to resolve the situation. No specific numbers or tactical details. Yes, Admiral. Chen returned her attention to the fleet status reports. The numbers continued climbing as more ships arrived at the staging area every hour. What had begun as a humanitarian rescue mission was becoming the most massive military deployment in galactic history. Meanwhile, in Krex space, General Voss was reviewing final preparations for the assault on the core Zilani worlds. His fleet had already moved into attack positions, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. "General," called Commander Thex from his sensor station, "we're detecting hyperspace distortions in the outer system. Multiple contacts approaching from the direction of human space." Voss looked up from his tactical planning display with mild interest. "How many contacts?" Thex studied his instruments with a puzzled expression. "The readings are unusual, General. There appears to be significant interference from multiple hyperspace generators operating simultaneously. Initial estimate suggests 20 to 30 vessels." Voss nodded, unsurprised by the numbers. It was approximately what his intelligence analysts had predicted from the humans. A token force to assuage their consciences, but nowhere near enough to affect the outcome of his conquest. "Continue with the assault plan. When the human ships arrive, we'll destroy them quickly and return to business." The hyperspace alarms began screaming across every ship in the Krex fleet 30 minutes later. General Voss rushed to the bridge of his flagship, expecting to see the modest human relief force that his sensors had detected. What he saw instead defied all logic and sent ice through his veins. The fabric of space itself was tearing open across a vast area of the outer system. Not the small, localized distortions that marked individual ships or small squadrons emerging from hyperspace, but massive, coordinated rifts that stretched across thousands of kilometers. The first vessel to emerge was a human dreadnought twice, the size of anything in Krex intelligence databases. Then came another and another and another, the view screen filled with human warships of every conceivable design and configuration. "Status report," Voss barked, trying to maintain composure, while his worldview crumbled around him. Commander Thex stared at his instruments in disbelief. "General, I'm reading massive fleet formations across the entire sector. Multiple battle groups are still emerging from hyperspace. Current count is over 1,500 vessels and climbing rapidly. 1,500 ships. Voss commanded just over 2,000 vessels in his entire invasion force, and he had considered that overwhelmingly superior to anything the galaxy could muster against him. The tactical display continued updating as more human formations materialized. Ancient frigates that looked like they belonged in a military museum formed up alongside state-of-the-art battleships that incorporated technologies Krek scientists had never seen. Converted civilian vessels flew next to purpose-built warships, all bearing the distinctive markings of dozens of different human governments and organizations. How is this possible? Voss whispered, more to himself than to his crew. On the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched the deployment with grim satisfaction. The largest military operation in human history was proceeding flawlessly. 4,236 ships had successfully made the jump to Zalani space, forming battle lines that stretched across the entire outer system. Communications. Open a channel to the Krek's flagship. Channel open, Admiral. Admiral Chen stepped forward, her voice carrying the combined authority of every human government and colony that had contributed to this unprecedented armada. Krek's fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Human Coalition. You are hereby ordered to cease all hostile operations against the Zalani Republic and withdraw from this system immediately. On his bridge, General Voss felt his military confidence cracking like ice under pressure. The human fleet stretched across space like a metal constellation, ship after ship extending beyond the range of his most powerful sensors. His own force, which had seemed invincible just hours ago, suddenly appeared inadequate. Human Admiral, he replied, forcing authority into his voice despite the fear growing in his chest. I am General Voss Krex of the Krex Empire. You are interfering in a legitimate military operation. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences. Chen's response came without hesitation. General Voss, you have exactly 1 hour to begin your withdrawal from Zalani space. After that time, we will consider any Krex vessel remaining in this system to be a hostile target. The transmission ended, leaving an uncomfortable silence on both bridges. Commander Thex leaned close to his general. Sir, our long-range scanners are detecting additional human formations still arriving in the outer system. Current count has exceeded 4,000 vessels, 4,000 ships. Voss realized with growing horror that humanity had not sent a relief expedition. They had sent their entire military. Every ship, every crew, every weapon they possessed had been mobilized for this single operation. For the first time in his career, General Voss found himself facing an enemy that possessed not just superior numbers, but the kind of unified determination that his empire had never encountered. The humans had come not as conquerors seeking territory or resources, but as protectors defending innocent people they had never met. As the hour deadline approached, Voss made the most difficult decision of his military career. The Krex Empire had built its reputation on overwhelming force and inevitable victory. But even the most brutal empire could not fight an enemy that outnumbered them 2-1 and possessed the moral certainty of defending the innocent. Signal the fleet, he ordered quietly. Begin withdrawal to the outer system perimeter. In the communications center on Zalani Prime, Ambassador Lyra watched in amazement as Krex ships began moving away from their attack positions. Captain Morrison stood beside her, equally stunned by the turn of events. I don't understand, Lyra said. How did such a small human relief force convince the Krex to withdraw? Morrison was studying the sensor readings from the outer system, his expression growing more incredulous by the moment. Ambassador, he said slowly, I don't think you understand what just happened here. According to these readings, humanity didn't send a small relief force. They sent everything. Every ship, every crew, every resource they could muster. Everything? Over 4,000 vessels from across human space. Every government, every colony, every independent settlement contributed whatever they could. This isn't just military assistance, Ambassador. This is humanity telling the galaxy that attacking innocent people will not be tolerated. As the Krex fleet completed its withdrawal and jumped to hyperspace, leaving Zalani space free for the first time in weeks, Lyra felt tears streaming down her face. Her people were safe. Her civilization would survive, and they owed it all to a species that most of the galaxy had dismissed as young and primitive. The humans had not just sent aid, they had sent hope, justice, and the promise that no one would stand alone against tyranny as long as humanity existed among the stars.